We want to thank you for being here, part of the Pan African Leadership series, where today we'll talk about Black marriage, the Pan African Agenda, or the Pan African Agenda, Black marriage. The notion that marriages are essential to the cultivation of sound and solid family life. Family life is essential to the growth and development of communities. And so we know that there has been a great assault or attack on African Black family, which also has changed how we look at family structure. It was the one thing that was assaulted in the context of enslavement, whether it was Arab enslavement or European enslavement. It was, first of all, the assault or the attack on the family. So I'm excited today to have with us Dr. Nisa Muhammad to talk about Black Marriage Day, and the dynamics of what it means to be in a marital relationship. Most of this we'll talk about the context of the U.S., but we also want to talk about the idea of the global implications of African family and family structure. So, Dr. Muhammad, thank you so much for being here and being a part of this particular process. First of all, give us an introduction about who are you and this work that you're doing in the world that is making such a great impact.
So first of all, thank you, Dr. Washington, for having me on your show. And I just want to thank your audience for really taking the time to listen to what, our exchange is going to be about marriage. So marriage, from the beginning of time, is this amazing relationship that allows two people to come before the God of their understanding, a higher power, and say, we're going to unite together and have a very special commitment for ourselves, for our family, and for our community, to now have a union that will allow us to procreate, have children, and create something that's very special. So these kinds of unions have been established since the beginning of time. And these unions provide special benefits that are not duplicated in any other kind of relationship. These unions, this marriage, and people have called it different things throughout time, have special benefits for men, they have special benefits for women, and they have special benefits for children, but they also have special benefits for that community. And what happened is, when we were kidnapped and brought to America, that what was one of the things that white supremacy forbid to Black people? We could not marry. And so, for the very reason that they did not allow us to marry, we should be thinking, why? Why did they forbid us to marry? That should also let us know the significance of this relationship. If marriage was just this whatever kind of relationship, they should have let us do it. But it is because there is so much significance to this relationship that they forbid us to do it. So that's why we're going to talk about marriage and why it is so significant for our community. Dr. Washington, do you want me to continue? So I can talk a little bit more about what marriage does for men, what it does for women, what it does for children, and what marriage does for the community. Let's start with men. So married men, especially Black married men, have higher income, they live longer, they have better health, and they also have a lower rate of recidivism. That means if a man is released from incarceration and he gets married, his chances of going back to prison are significantly decreased. Why is that? What happens is that if a man is released from incarceration and he gets married, that wife says to him, you are not going to be living, and we're not going to be around your criminal friends and that behavior and that environment that you used to be around. You're going to settle down. We have a family now, and you're going to be engaged in a family routine. We are going to move away from those habits and that environment that allowed you to engage in criminal behavior. What is that routine? You're going to get up, you're going to look for a job, you're taking the children to school, you're picking the children up, you're coming home for dinner. That routine allows a man to establish himself as a family man. If a man is single and he does not have the responsibilities of wife and children, his life is very different. He's more inclined to engage in criminal behavior, and his risk of recidivism increases. So marriage, and as research has shown, marriage reduces a man's chances of recidivism. It has this kind of benefit for a man. Married men make more money. Why is a black married man seen as more responsible on his job? He takes off work less often. He speeds less. He wears his seatbelt more. Why is that? It's because he knows he has the responsibility of a wife and children that he has to take care of. I had a friend one time who said, you know what, I think I'm just going to quit my job and get unemployment for a while and just look for something else. And when I said to him, you know what, you can only do that because you're single. If you were married, you would not be able to do that. He says, well, I just don't get along with the people on my job. I just want to explore something different. Again, you can only do that because you are single. If you had a wife and children, you would be learning how to get along with people as you did in kindergarten. And so marriage has these benefits for men that you can't duplicate these benefits if you're just living with somebody, if you just have a girlfriend. Marriage has these amazing benefits. So, Dr. Washington, do you want me to stop or do you want me to go on? I think
You
you're
did a
on.
fantastic job, right? So the idea of marriage in the American context, the idea of incarceration, so forth and so on. You recognize, and I love how you said this about how when we look at the global African reality, that there was a need by the oppressor to attack the basic unit of any civilization, which is marriage. And I think
Mhm.
that has trickled down to how we see marriages in our community. The question becomes, what are our basic values? If you talk about the basic values of marriage across cultures, right? If you look at the African concept of marriage and coming together, what does it mean for a man and woman to come together? You mentioned about the idea of breadwinner and incarceration rate and working and employment. What are some of the values that you see really come out of both men and women in the context of marriage that have global implications?
So, some of the values that come out of it is definitely in terms of conflict resolution. How do children learn how to resolve conflict? That's a basic value right there. Children learn how to resolve conflict when they see their parents who love each other dearly have an argument and resolve it and kiss and make up. So they learn that you can love someone and you can have an argument. It doesn't, you don't have to go to war, that you can resolve that conflict peacefully and love each other, kiss and make up. You don't have to have a beef. You don't have to go to war. You doesn't have to come to fisticuffs. And life can go on happily. Children learn that things can go on and things can be resolved. That is a great value right there, that children learn that you can be peaceful in your home, that peace can occur. That is a great value right there. Children learn the value to save money because they see their parents save money for various things in their life. We're saving for a vacation, we're saving for education, we're saving for a home. Children learn the value of doing this. Children learn the value of cooperation because they see their parents cooperating for a variety of different things in the family. So these are a few values that children learn just by seeing their parents getting along. Children learn the value of compromise because they see their parents compromise. The husband and wife learn how to compromise. They learn that everything is not all about me. Parents, the husband and wife, the spouse learn that it's not all about me. Spouses learn we thinking because generally when people get married, they're used to things being all about them. Unless they grew up with a lot of siblings. When you grow up with a lot of siblings, you know it's never all about you. If you have a lot of siblings, you know things are, you learn how to share. But then you grow up and you're being on your own, you learn that things can be all about you. But when you get married, you learn that things are not all about you and you learn to have we thinking. And that takes time for some couples to adjust to. The things about we and how we share and how we build together and how we grow a marriage that's beneficial for both people. And the marriage often becomes like this third entity. Is this good for the marriage? It may be great for me, but is this activity good for the marriage? And sometimes it's hard to step back and say, you know what, I'm getting ready to do A, B, C, and D. This is a great idea, but will this activity benefit my marriage? Will this activity be good for my marriage in the long run? It may look good in the here and the now, but will this activity benefit my marriage?
So the idea of the activity, right? So activities that we can engage in, right, in not understanding the power of marriage. You
Mm.
have kicked off something called Black Marriage Day. You are the founder of such. It's had made a huge impact in the U.S., where there is a relook at marriage. Now, some people suggest that marriage is not the answer. They say that people should not just be forced to be married because of these things that you mentioned. And so you have a statement for that. You have a thought for that. But I just wanted you to know that some people say, well, marriage, we keep forcing people into marriage when really we should be focusing on healthy relationships. And if marriage is the product byproduct, then that's fine. But the relationship is more important than marriage. What do you say to that?
So what I say to that with a smile is that you could never force any black person to get married. We've heard of shotgun marriages decades ago, but you could never force anybody to get married. And so for people to think that just because we talk about marriage, that we are trying to force people to get married, that is a fallacy. But because we're talking about marriage, we're giving people information, just like we talk about any subject. We're giving people information. And the problem is that we don't talk about marriage for heterosexuals. Homosexual marriage and gay marriage is talked about all the time. Nobody says, don't talk about gay marriage. Don't talk about marriage for that population. Don't talk about marriage for them. We can talk about marriage for them all the time, but heterosexual marriage, don't talk about it for this population. They don't need to talk about marriage. Why can't we talk about marriage for this population? Yes, it talk about marriage. Yes, we want people to be in healthy relationships, absolutely. That is the foundation of a healthy marriage, but it should not stop there. That should be the beginning. People need to know that a healthy marriage begins with a healthy relationship, but that should be the beginning of what leads to a healthy marriage. Because if it's just about a healthy relationship, people will go from one healthy relationship to another, to another, to another. A serial, healthy relationship. And we don't want that for our people. Because, see, I ask couples, families, when I'm doing presentations, how many of you want your daughter to grow up to be a single mom? No, really. I asked them, how many of you want your daughter to grow up to be a single mom where she has to parent and provide by herself? Nobody raises their hands. I asked them, how many of you want your son to be a single dad where he has to worry about child support enforcement, wage garnishment, and perhaps um, jail time? How many of you really want that? Nobody raises their hands. And so if we don't want this for our children, nobody wants this, then we have to talk to them about the opposite. We have to talk to them about the alternatives. And the alternatives are a healthy marriage. And so we can't be afraid to talk to our children about the alternatives. If we don't want them to be single moms, we don't want our sons to have face child support enforcement, wage garnishment, and possible jail time, we have to talk to them about the alternatives.
So that is that's a powerful conversation in the context of the Americas. Just to note that we have individuals that are tuning in to us from various areas of the continent, right? In Africa, from Kenya to Tanzania, Zimbabwe. People are in Ghana. So this is a global production, right? So people are tuning
Wonderful.
in, and so we know that there's certain values that really are tied to marriage and family structure. We
Hmm.
also know that again, the assault of the family is the destruction of the civilization. We know that the European oppressors have come in to shape how we see marriage and see relationships and see family structures. They came in, of course, the reason why we can utilize the word booty to talk about in the English language to talk about somebody's buttocks is because it was the spoils and plunder of war that the Europeans wanted most. That is, that if they could get to the women to be able to engage in ethnic cleansing or to impregnate them, they could create another product. We know that, for example, in the Gambia, what's now called Kuta Kinte Island, it happened all over, but this is just one example that I studied recently. It was St. James Island, Kuta Kinte Island, that white men figured out that if a woman came over on the ship pregnant, that she was worth more than not being pregnant. So many times the white oppressors would impregnate the women so that they would yield a higher return. Again, this was a breaking up of the family, which then set into motion on the continent and all throughout the African world this idea of family and brokenness and severance of such sacred ties as the norm, as opposed to it being simply a moment in time. And so we have these things occurring in marriages and relationships. So I wanted to just really highlight this idea of the imposition of European thought, or Arab thought, some would suggest also, into relationships that has caused a break. And we know that religions also talk about affirming marriage and relationships as well. Uh, but in the cultural context, we know that we have a serious issue to contend with. So we know that some marriages, for example, some talk about polygamy, and there's also polyandry that occurs, which can all be healthy marriages. So we don't want to isolate the idea of marriages only between a man and a woman. You also mentioned in the U.S., especially, the advancing of same-sex marriage. However, there is a downplaying of heterosexual relationships. That is another powerful statement to be aware of. So, as you do this work in the U.S., you have conceptualized Black Marriage Day, and I'm glad to be a partner with you on that. What has been, what led you to conceptualize Black Marriage Day, and then what has been its success, and where is it going? Where is it headed?
So, what led me to conceptualize Black Marriage Day is just talking to friends and family and everyone around me talking about marriage, and it was always something negative. Somebody done me wrong, we're getting divorced. I had recently been divorced, and it was just something negative. And I was just perplexed. Like, why is everything about Black marriage so negative? And I was at a conference called Smart Marriages, and I was talking to this older white man about Black marriages, and he was like, Black people don't want to be married. And I was just stunned. And I was like, that can't be right. And I realized that there was nothing in the culture that was affirming Black marriages. And so I said, well, somebody's got to do something to help our people affirm Black marriages. And I said, well, maybe I can do something, to do it. And I talked about the need to affirm Black marriages. And so I was doing a workshop on, the need to affirm Black marriages and the need for some kind of day or program to affirm Black marriages. And so this was at Smart Marriages in 2002. And so after that workshop, I got a call from Essence Magazine, and asked me, they said, okay, so when is Black Marriage Day? And I was like, what? They're like, when is Black Marriage Day? And I was like, okay, yeah, when is Black Marriage Day? And so I started looking at the calendar, trying to figure it out. And I, called the reporter back and I said, okay, Black Marriage Day, the first one will be in 2003, the fourth Sunday in March. And the article came out in the November issue of Essence Magazine announcing Black Marriage Day. And the first Black Marriage Day, I think, had like 13 cities in 2003. And, that was the first big success, that 13 cities around the country said, we will stand up and we will promote Black marriage. And since then, Black Marriage Day has just kind of taken off around the country, where small cities, large cities have said, we will do something to celebrate marriage in the Black community. And cities have been very creative in what they do to promote marriage. And I've just really been amazed at the creativity and the amazing things that people have done. And I'm so excited that you're going to be working with me to do that. And we're just looking forward to what 2022 brings.
So I'm honored to be a part of that process, and it's amazing how this birthed out of thought and idea, and people see it as a real need. And so when we talk about Black Marriage Day, and I talk about it being a part of the Pan African Agenda, what I'm suggesting is that if the oppressor desired to break up break up the people of African descent in their productivity, then the family became the way to do that. And so this idea of Black Marriage Day is a slap in the face to oppression, because it simply says that we will affirm that which was said to not to be valuable or worth having a worth, but also the person at smart marriages say Black people don't want to be married without understanding the history of marriage in America for enslaved Africans specifically. When we talk about the inability to be able to choose a partner and or a mate to marry, that was not an option under the process or the auspice of enslavement. As a matter of fact, the fundamental function of the enslaved was to bring forth products, as I mentioned earlier about the Gambian coming over pregnant, to bring forth a product to be able to engage in labor to increase the net worth of value of the oppressor. And so then they made decisions as to who could marry who. So they found someone of certain structures. And so they liked this person's stature and this person's stature. And they said, you all come together and create a thing of stature that can help to enhance my earnings in the fields or whatever task I desire to have. So the reproductive rights of African people was under the control of the oppressor. It's also controlled relationships and who one bonded with. And so the other part is that people still in the context of this had loving relationships or love for other people. And the other challenge is that you talk about provisions, that it is being able to provide for one's family. That was a real challenge as well under the issue of the auspice of enslavement, because of the process of the oppressor controlling the wealth, controlling housing, controlling food, income. So all of those things were controlled by the oppressor, which impacted the idea of marriage. There was never a time when Africans did not value marriage and family. The issue was it was negatively influenced by the dynamics of racism and oppression. So we have to recognize that when we come to 2021, 22, when we come to what's happening now about Black marriage, we often have a very myopic view of how we got here without looking broadly. And some accuse me of looking too broadly and excusing the things that are very obvious, that people being irresponsible. But I want to suggest that if anything exists, it was created. What went into it to make it what it is right now? And so Black Marriage Day becomes a way to address that. I also contend that we can look at this idea of a Pan-African family marriage construct. That is, how do we promote the idea of strong family structures globally? And what are the things that we can learn from one another? If we go over to again, I'm back in the Gambia and watch the notion of male-female relationships, there's a lot to learn about how women address men and vice versa in African society that we don't have in the U.S. or places where we have been oppressed. So we have this long cycle of hurt and pain. That's the scholars come out of me, right? The idea of this long cycle of hurt and pain. So we are angry with one another. However, we're not having loving relationships where we affirm one another. And so that is also a major challenge, which is part of what we address with Black Marriage Day. But the idea I want to say is that what do you think about extending this idea of Black Marriage Day to be one where we celebrate the African family structure and African marriages?
I think that's an amazing idea. 2 thumbs up. I'm all for it because, it's desperately needed. You talked about the influence of white supremacy and the influence of what's being taught and the influence of, especially on our young people and what they learn. For example, when I work with high schoolers and young people, I give them this example. There used to be this like childhood rhyme that children used to say, Michael and Janice sitting in a tree, Kissing. First comes love, then comes marriage, Then comes Janice with the baby carriage. Children used to sing this decades ago. That was a cultural cue of how marriage and family was supposed to happen. First comes love, then comes marriage, then comes the baby carriage. Well, if you fast forward that to today, I ask young people to modernize that. How does that look like in your life today? Make that, modernize it. They say, okay, Raheem and Shanika sitting in a tree, Kissing. First comes love, no. First comes sex, then comes the baby, then comes child support. There's no love and there's no marriage. And I asked them, I said, okay, which scenario would you rather have? And that makes them ponder. That makes them think as if they have a choice because previously they've never been presented with the option. They've never been asked or they've never been presented with an option. All they think they have is sex, baby, and child support. They've never been presented with an option to say, you know what? What about love? What about marriage? What about baby carriage? And so I say, take some time to think that you have an option. Which would you rather have? And 99% of the time, girls and boys would rather have first comes love, then comes marriage, then comes the baby carriage. But a very small percentage says, I would rather have sex, baby, then child support. And I ask them why. Because a life with child support is very enticing. You get something for nothing. To be able to sit at home and just get a check, the white man has made that life fair seeming. He has made that life that we people see on TV, the real housewives of whatever, that lifestyle is very enticing. Where you are getting something for nothing. All you have to do is have a baby and you get a check. That life looks very enticing. And so that is the smoke and mirrors of social media and the media. So that people think that lifestyle is great. But really, when you make young people think about the options they have, I really have the option of having love and marriage in my life, as opposed to all the drama of baby mama drama and this guy and that guy and this disease and that disease and going through all of this heartache. You mean I have an option to really have love and marriage? I'll take that any day. But our young people are never given the understanding, even Pan African, even worldwide, to say, I could have that option in my life. You mean I could really have love and marriage? Sign me up. But we are responsible for helping them understand worldwide that love and marriage is an opportunity for you. And I'm saying this to all of our listeners. You can have love and marriage. You don't have to have what this world is offering you. You can have love and marriage. You just have to seek it. You don't have to have what this world is offering, this serial relationship, that serial relationship, this heartbreak, that heartbreak. No, you can have love and marriage and then the baby carriage.
So that powerful, right? And in the American context, a powerful point about how we put things out of order. And somebody would suggest that it's not even about always about love. It's about the issue of a love of a relationship or a business relationship to continue to extend the Black family. I want to share this. Some comments are coming in that we have to address. Of course, Picurus mentioned about being in Papua New Guinea, saying that, of course, I would like to marry an African girl, but I'm distanced from my country. And so that's one challenge, the idea that we become estranged from one another and we find ourselves working to form meaningful relationships with one another. And there are ways of forming bonds if one wants to connect with someone of African descent. There are ways to do that. We just have to be creative in doing that. And of course, we can talk about how that could happen at some level, but we do know that because of the estrangement, in the context, of course, of enslavement and other things, we have to always navigate our way back to one another. Two other comments I think that are so heavy that speak to estrangement, that even if the person looks like me, but if their mind is not connected to themselves, that means that if they don't see themselves as being beautiful in their own right, then there is another issue. So you can look like a Black person of African descent. However, at the same time, you don't think like one. And so Prudence Conte says very eloquently this idea that that the destruction of the family unit was vital to the success of our was vital to their success, but the idea of removal of discipline, so on, but create another race, and it says the end product was prostitution, bleaching of cream, skin bleaching, and straightening of our hair. So Prudence talks about how one can look Black, but their mind has been raped and pillaged so much so that they see the European as dominant. So Ding's statement also is very similar in the sense that he says that the idea of skin bleaching is an issue. That is that there could be a person again that looks like me, an African person. However, their mind is European, which impacts marital satisfaction. How can we be in a relationship with someone who does not love themselves? And somebody says, I want you to love me unconditionally, but they don't love the things about themselves. If you can't love the skin color that you were born with, it's hard for anybody to even love you because you don't love what you see in the mirror every day. If you can't love your hair, right, the idea of the coiliness of it, however it grows, then you can't. No one can love you enough because you can't love yourself. So that is a real African issue as well. To love somebody who does not love themselves is an act of futility. It will never happen. And so these are very powerful statements to suggest that marriage is one thing. The first marriage is the marriage and love of self, not self in selfishness, but love of the divine that is within, love of the power of who I am within. Then I can love somebody else. Somebody says that when you marry somebody, they say, this is my other half. Well, two halves don't make a whole. Two halves make two half people. You have to be whole within yourself. And so both Prudence and Ding are saying that there has to be some wholeness in the persons coming together, the love of self, the love of that Africanity. And that is one of the major things that have been destroyed within the context of European dominance, has been the hatred of our Africanity and the love of them, making them our God. And we're not seeing that we are powerful gods on earth. Go ahead, talk to me. What's your
So,
response?
that's what Frantz Fanon wrote about, black skin, white mass, and that the oppressor, that's the goal of the oppressor, to make us like him. And the only way he can make us unto him is to destroy ourselves. And the destruction of black people and the destruction of and to make us hate ourselves is not just us, it is worldwide. I went to Manila and saw bleaching cream. So, and the people in Manila are so light. I mean, they're damn near white, and they have bleaching cream. And so understand the pervasiveness of white supremacy. The pervasiveness is so widespread. It is so thick that even people in Manila, the Philippines, who are so light, they want to be white. They are dissatisfied with their skin and they want to be whiter. And so that shows you the depth of the white man's destruction, that even people who are so near white are not white enough. And so that we have a lot of work to do to help our people to love themselves. And we have to work so very hard with our girls to help them to love themselves. And it starts at birth. I mean, it really, really, really starts at birth, that we have to help our girls to know how to love themselves. And if we don't work consciously and diligently to help our girls to love themselves and our boys to love themselves, they will live a life remiss and they will be a detriment to someone else's child. And it'll be very hard for them to be happy in a marriage because they will not be happy with themselves. It'll be very difficult for them to be a content spouse because they will not be content with themselves.
And that's critical to note, right? So I will never be happy and satisfied with anyone else until I can be satisfied and at peace with myself. And that's one of the major challenges that I think that we face in marriages, especially Black marriages globally, that we do not measure up to this external sense of beauty. We don't measure up economically. We don't measure up in a variety of ways. And as a result, we bring that same toxicity to our relationships, and it causes us to be contaminated and breed more toxic elements from that, right? And so we have to be clear about, again, the assault on the Black family is the destruction of African civilization. And so if it can be a financial assault, if it can be a physical assault, if it can be a psychological assault, the idea of my beauty is psychological, financial, working, jobs, income, earnings, if it becomes social assaults, the idea of how we engage one another, we know that that is a way to destroy a civilization for perpetuity. And so this is why Black Marriage Day is so important, or why the idea of marriage is a Pan-African agenda. Bakari just stated also that that this is a brilliant, profound discussion about the consciousness of who we are, so that we can strengthen our relationship. The idea of being conscious of who we are, the power that we possess, the beauty that we have. That is the thing that produces more beautiful people. But if we have people that are broken, then they have broken people bringing broken reality, and all of these things begin to come forward. Prudence comes back and talks about the cycle of broken people at some level. This idea that when a person is broken, they continually try to find themselves inside or with someone else. So men who have been, Black men who've lacked this development, this you mentioned about coming out of the womb, this identity development piece. Who am I? The power that I have, are always trying to be reborn in wombs of various women. And so they have this cycle of non-committed relationships with people because they're trying to find themselves inside of the womb of someone else. Or the same thing, women are receiving men trying to be validated and never satisfied, because you cannot be satisfied with someone else validating you until you understand how to validate yourself. Once you have gotten to the point of self-approval, then nobody else's opinion of you makes any difference to you, right? And so this idea of understanding how we have, at some level under oppression, lost the love of ourselves, our culture, our beingness as a people. We've lost the love and passion for what we bring to the universe. And while we lose that love, we keep doing things and creating things, and they keep benefiting from it. For example, the continent of Africa is like the world's shopping center, a Walmart. They go and get everything that they need for their existence. They go and get tea for their English tea. They go and get gold for the crown on their head. They go get the cocoa for their chocolate. They go and get a variety of things. They go and get a Tantalite, a Colton for their computers. They go and get all these things at the same time of economically depriving a civilization or culture. And that begins to create a condition of dissatisfaction in relationships. And now you have a breakup of the family, and it's a cycle that continues on and on and on and on. We have to be able to address, and that's why I think we think about Black Love Day, the idea of African Love Festival, what we just love on multiple levels. That's why we were doing a Black Love Day in an event in the Gambia this summer. We did have a couple or two to come and be a part of that. That is that if we know that it was on a continent that our families were broken, challenged, we go back there to do some healing and mending. Bakari also says that to love somebody who does not love themselves is an exercise of futility, teaching from Dr. Washington. Okay, you just brought back what it is that I said. Thank you, brother Bakari. I didn't know I said it. It just flowed. It was spirit. And sometimes we see it's like, wow, that was pretty deep. I need to remember what I just said. Right. So the idea of loving someone who does not love themselves is an exercise of futility. Dr. Muhammad.
You know, that's where we have to start. As I mentioned, we have to start with our children and teach them how to love themselves, which is also a reinforcement for ourselves to make sure that we are, in fact, loving ourselves. That's where it really has to begin, and create families that are loving examples for other people. Because when we see families that love each other, it helps us to remind ourselves that we have to love each other. That's where it all begins. And those small nuclear examples, we have to begin to grow, and we have to create a worldwide movement of love. And that's so very important.
The love of the black self. That's the beginning, right? The
Hmm.
basis of all love is self-love. And
Yes,
that
that
is
is really the basis.
right. And so the basis of all knowledge is self-knowledge, that when I can stop and love myself. And that's what we learn to filter out all of the contaminants that have gotten into our space. Like can we look in the mirror and love what we see? When can we look in the eyes of someone else that looks like us and love what we see? Not put the devaluation on it, but to love what we see. If I have to speak to you in some very inhumane terms, it speaks to, one, how I feel about myself, but secondly, how I feel about you and your essence. This is what Black Love Day is about recognizing the true essence of one another. What does it mean to come together? We understand that African proverb says that the woman is a garden, the man is like the fence. The idea that there is a beautifulness in the garden and the man protects it. We also know that the another proverb says that the man is the head. If the man is the head, then the woman is the neck. That the head can't turn out the neck. The idea that they come together. We talk about male-female complementarity over to Shaka's work. We talk about how men and women come together to make one another better, then we complement one another. And that's the power of coming together. People can celebrate a variety of relationships. However, when one begins to examine the power of healthy men and women, and in this context, Black men, people of African descent, and women coming together who can love one another, can love themselves, and know how I am here to make you better as you are here to make me better. I'm not here to correct you. I'm not here to reparent you. I am here to enhance you, because our coming together is not just about us, but our coming together is about the African world.
That is
Black,
so important. I mean, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think that is so very, very important that people have to be reminded that our coming together is about making one another better. And by making one another better, we create better children and we create a better community. That is really, really, really so very important. And it's not about, as you said, recreating one another. It's not about reparenting one another. It's really about multiplying the efforts of one another and helping one another to be the best we can be. That cannot be said enough.
so how is it that we come together? The question becomes, what is it about you that makes me a better man,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And what is it about me that makes you a better woman? That becomes a conversation in relationships.
And how does that happen? What is that? How does that happen? And what does that look like?
Yes, right. And how do we get to the point, as we talk about Islam, right? How do we submit, right? And the submission is not an issue of passivity, but
Mhm.
it is a moment of submitting for elevation, right? When I can
Mhm.
stop and I can submit to the essence of woman, I'm elevated in my manhood and vice versa. Right?
Yeah,
And
that's so powerful.
and we don't learn that. We don't get that in the system. We learn this in the European system. Marriage is about power imposition. It's about power exchange, taking on names as property,
Mhm.
as opposed to submitting to ascend to a higher way of being.
That has to be taught because we've been miseducated into a European system that does not really see the value and purpose and power of marriage.
Right. And so that power and purpose of marriage becomes the bond, the commitment, and it is in the commitment, and only when we commit can we elevate, right?
Mhm.
Can we get to a higher level? Because when you're not committed, a non-committal person is a dangerous person. It's almost like when you have a magnifying glass and it does not necessarily point in a particular spot, you can't burn a hole in anything. But if you take that magnifying glass and turn it just right and make that light shine in a particular space, it causes fire to happen. It burns a hole in paper.
Yes,
When
that's
you have
amazing.
undifferentiated energy, non-committed energy, then it does not bring about an impact or effect. It creates chaos. It shines, but not it does not create a concerted effort where something can happen for the betterment of someone else. We
And
have to
that's a
understand that
scientific fact.
the power of commitment is where we begin to find our true power and purpose in life.
Yes. The
Go
power of
ahead, I'm
commitment
listening.
is a scientific fact.
So Bakari comes back again. He says that we have lost the love of being African, knowing and acting as Africans, as well as working together with and for ourselves to collectively empower African people. Powerful piece. We have lost the love of being who we are. We strive diligently to become unlike ourselves. And as a result, we create a condition of estrangement from our divine purpose. Powerful piece. We have a love for being like that which despises us, which means by default, we despise ourselves. And therefore, when I see you, I despise you.
You
Heavy
know, that
piece. Go
that
ahead.
is really heavy. You know, I took a class so I'm in a PhD program at Howard University in African Studies, and one of my classes that I took last semester was on conflict resolution. And the professor, we were talking about how in Africa, there once upon a time there were no jails. And I was really stunned by that. And I was like, what? And so my professor was like, yeah, you know, jails were implemented by Europeans. Africans did not have jails. You know, if there was a problem with something, they took it to the tribal council or the council of elders, whatever. And whatever the problem was, they solved it for the betterment of the family, the tribe, the society, whatever. They didn't put people in jail. And that perplexed me. And that goes back to what this brother said. We have lost the love of being African. And there was an African way of resolving conflict that did not involve jails. And I was blown away by that concept that they didn't even have jails. And now they have all kind of jails in Africa because the Europeans brought that system of resolving conflict. And so today, from Africa to America, our only way of resolving conflict is a European system. And so we don't even know, you know, people don't even know that once upon a time, all we think about is jails. All we think about is incarceration. All we think about is doing all of these European ways of resolving conflict. And all we know is how to resolve conflict in a way that demeans and dehumanizes and, you know, sucks the life out of people. We don't know how to resolve conflict in a way that, you know, empowers people and gives life to people and makes them, you know, feel better about who they are. And so it's just a whole thing about knowing, you know, the love of being African. So it's just we've lost the love of being African.
Bakari is on it, right? So
Yeah.
also, Noliwe says that the jails begin with the slave. We'll stop with the enslavement dungeons and the market pens, and we will complicit in the process. So there's an acknowledgement of the European bringing forth this incarceration system. But the idea of being African and how do we resolve our challenges and the major conflict that we have is often within ourselves. There's an African proverb says that if there is no enemy within, then the
Okay,
enemy
you kind of breaking
without
up. Could you say that again? You
can do us no harm.
I don't know if it's my bad internet on campus, but you were breaking up. I did not hear that.
There's no harm. We have to have the love of ourselves and love of being African.
So, we're so excited to be a part of this. I am so excited to be a part of this. And I want to thank everyone for all of your comments as we near the end of this program, for being a part of this. So Bakari says non-committed energy creates chaos. This is our condition throughout the world African community. We are unbalanced, pursuing escapism, resisting Pan-Africanism practices and projects. So I hope everyone can hear me. So, talking about marriage is one of my favorite topics. And it's an opportunity to really get people to express their views about a very special issue that unites people around the world. Marriage is something that I said from the beginning is something that people had the people do um, they call it marriage. They do call it other things, whatever. And so, as we close out, I want to thank everyone for being a part of this, and thank you for stay tuned for our next show. And let me tell you, as I said before, love and marriage can be yours. Wedded bliss can be yours, and you can have it. Just remember to try it. Thank you so very much, and we will see you next week on the next show. Thank you for listening.